are coming on, that's great. If not, it's just going to be us, and that's okay. Okay, so we're going to be introducing you to Kotlin. I'm going to talk about the language, and I'm going to hopefully go from zero knowledge up to developing an Android app using Kotlin. Good morning, Gurjas. Okay. So again, this is an introduction to Kotlin. Okay, so here's the whole overview of what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about and explain why Kotlin. Why would I bother giving this language, which some of you've never really heard of, some of you've heard of a bit. Where do you start? How do you get on board with this language? And I'm going to go through the basic variables, using the print line, and doing some basic string formatting. I'm going to talk about flow of control. These are ifs and loops. I'm going to talk about functions. I'm going to touch on class collections a little bit, classes a little bit. I'm not going to go deeply into those because I want to make sure there's enough time for me to talk about Android development at the end. I'm going to talk a little bit about functional programming because it has to be talked about with Kotlin. You can't really do Kotlin properly without understanding functional programming, unfortunately. I'm going to talk about null safety. Null safety is a big deal in Kotlin. And then I'm going to get you onboarded with Android development. Okay, so that's the overview of what's going on. I will share this PowerPoint at the end as well as a separate Word document I have for notes that I have on this stuff. Okay, so why Kotlin? The first thing is it's built on the Java virtual machine. You know that Java is a very popular language in the world today. Well, Kotlin compiles its code to Java bytecode. So anything you make with Kotlin is 100% compatible with Java. If a device has a Java virtual machine on it, i.e., it can run Java programs, then it'll run your Kotlin program just fine because it is in Java bytecode. Okay, so it has a lot of modern features. Java came out in 1995. That's a while ago. And there's been advances in the ways about thinking about programming. And a lot of these advances have been kind of shoehorned into Java. Kotlin's built with those ideas from the start, so they're better integrated. It makes the experience more seamless. There's less boilerplate code. If you've programmed in Java, you recognize that to make a simple class, there's a bunch of boilerplate code you need. If you're using Swing, for instance, there's a bunch of just stuff you need to set things up. There's less of that in Kotlin. It is stable. It didn't just come out yesterday. It's reached a point now where a lot of people are getting on board. To me, the moment of stability was when Google said, yes, we recognize Kotlin as the next language that you can develop Android applications in. Not only is it their next one, but it's their preferred language. So Java says Kotlin is the language we should be using for developing Android apps, and that's a big deal. Google's not some little company. Okay, so where do you start? First, you need to have, okay. First, you need to download Intellij. Now, it's not the only place to do Kotlin, and if you choose to ignore this step, that's going to be okay. Okay, there are two Intellij environments I'm going to suggest you have if you're developing Kotlin. One is Intellij, and the second, now a lot of you have Intellij already, and you can just tell it to recognize Kotlin, and that's pretty easy to do. And the second one is Android Developer. Okay, so it's nice if you have both. I'm gonna go with the playkotlin.org, which is just Kotlin's online IDE. And you can also do things in Replit. Replit does support Kotlin fully. Okay, so let's talk about getting IntelliJ. Okay, so stop. Do I need to stop that? I don't know. Show of hands, how many have IntelliJ already? Okay, so let's do this. There's this website called Google. Anyways, just okay, so type in IntelliJ, download. Now, IntelliJ has a full-featured IDE, but its community IDE is perfectly acceptable. You can do everything you need to do in the community version. You don't need to get some hacked, broken version. You just go and install IntelliJ. The community edition is fine. Okay. Okay, so there's the ultimate version, 30-day trial. Don't do 30-day trials. It's going to annoy you. Then you're going to end up saying, oh, I really, really need the best software ever. So let me find a hacked one. Let me tell you this. When a company provides a wonderful free software, don't steal from them. It's rude. Okay, so all you do, download the exe. Okay, you can get your email there, but that's it. Okay. So wait and install it like a standard install. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about you having the correct IDE, but I would suggest if you're going to take any of this stuff seriously, you do download IntelliJ. And okay, so what does it look like when it's running? Okay, let me. Okay, so IntelliJ. Now, hey. Oh, I already have it open. Okay, so let's go from IntelliJ. Actually, let me exit this. So you get it installed. Well, let me wait on getting to IntelliJ. Let's get to the simplest version first. Okay, because if you want to follow along, simplicity is often the most important. Okay, so the simple version is you simply go to play.kotlinlang.org. This will give you the simplest editor possible. Now, it's not going to let you save your progress. Well, it won't let you save multiple files. It just remembers your current progress. So it saves it in a cookie, basically. Okay, so this lets you just play around to experiment with the stuff that I'm teaching. Now, if you don't have another environment set up, this one's completely fine. Okay, because you want to just be able to experiment with the stuff, and you can even work on a bunch of stuff and leave it in comments for later, and you can transfer it to a proper editor later. Okay, so there's one place, at very least, you can get there. If you have if you can get to the web, you can get here. Okay, so I'm sure, well, show of hands, how many have used Replit before? I'm sure most of you have at some point or another. Show of hands. Replit? And Andy's just too lazy to put his hand up. Gotcha. Okay. So here, when you make a new REPL, you just select Kotlin. Okay, so you can choose either to use play.kotlin.org or use Replit or use IntelliJ. Now, if you don't want to wait to install Intellij, because it's a little more confusing, you're completely 100% okay to just use Replit. Okay, so I'm going to use Replit because I think it's the kind of the in-between. It's pretty easy to get onto, and it's going to explain what's going on. Okay, so I think that's going to be the best editor for us. It's nice you can see the output right here. Okay. Oh, I should mention this, the Kotlin Cones. Why can I never remember just the back arrow? Okay. Kotlin Cones. Let's talk about that just for just a second. Okay, so in Kotlin, you have this after the play. Oh, when you're at the play thing, you'll see the top right, it says cones. Okay, cones are like a Zen Buddhist thing. They're fundamental ideas. And so it'll step you through a lot of the fundamental ideas. If you, after today's session, and I've thrown a bunch of stuff at you, and it hasn't fully stuck, I would suggest go through the cones. I may even be pronouncing it wrong, by the way. Okay, and all you do is you go through these, and they give you little things, and it says, okay, hey, I want you to do this. And it'll even say, this is the note to read, so you can learn how to do this. Okay, it gives you all the way through all the notes. You read through, then you go back, and you say, okay, what's the answer? And if you get really stuck, you go, show me the answer, because I don't know what the heck it is. And it's like, oh, just, okay. Oh, mine's already filled in, because I've done it before. Anyways, the Kotlin Cones are an excellent way to teach yourself Kotlin. So whenever you're learning something, don't expect to see it once and know it for life. Okay, you have to reinforce it. You have to go over the basics a few times before it really starts making sense. The best way to learn things is to do things with it. Okay, but again, Cones is a great refresher. Okay, so we got John Replit. Oh, the docs are pretty good. kotlinlang.org/docs. It's worth. Let me. Hey, why can't I highlight? Am I gonna type that in like a savage? Sure. Okay, so. Okay, kotlinlang.org/docs. And that's good enough to get to the documentation. The documentation is pretty solid. Okay, with a nice menu here, get you through all stuff you need to talk about, the basics, concepts, all these things are quickly accessible in the docs. Whenever you learn anything new, make sure you know where to find good documentation for it. Okay, I know a lot of you think the only place you should ever find documentation is by typing it into Google and going to, the name escapes me now, and getting a forum where someone has asked the same question. No, when you go through documentation to find the answer yourself, you end up finding other answers you didn't know. You end up getting a deeper understanding. You don't want to just get someone else's answer when they deeply understand it. You copy and paste it into your code and you tell yourself you understand it. No, you want to deeply understand things. Get familiar with documentation. Okay. So those are all the resources you need to get started. Okay. Let's get at it then. Okay, basic variables. Hey, where's my, there we go. Don't care about that. Okay, there's my REPL. So basic variables. Okay, so as far as you're concerned, every variable in Kotlin is an object. It's not entirely true, but it's close enough because it treats it like it is. You don't care about the efficiency choices they made under the hood. You really don't. You just care about, from a programming point of view, how does it work? Okay, so we have vals and vars. Okay, so val x colon int x equals 7. Okay, so nothing weird going on here. Print line x. The only thing weird is my inability to spell. Okay. This is why I use play sometimes rather than replit, and I think I'm going to right now. Play is lightning fast. Replit, yeah. Okay. There we go. Now, okay, so x plus equals 4. Seems reasonable, right? I run it. Val cannot be reassigned. Okay, so the difference between a val, so a val is a constant. This is the same as final in Java, const in other languages. So it just gives it can get assigned a value once, where of course var is a variable. Pretty obvious there. Okay. Now in Kotlin, one of the best things about Kotlin is it likes to infer things. So you don't have to be explicit always, meaning if I do that, it's like, oh, you mean it's an integer. Gotcha. Okay. I don't know what's up with the weird indent, Kotlin. This editor, I mean. Okay, so y equals 5.0. Okay. Okay. Don't be fooled. This is not Python. In other words, I cannot say y equals 9. It's like, whoa, 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 buddy. You made that a float. Actually, you made it a double. There are floats, but this is a double. If I examine the type of it, it'll tell me it's a double. Okay, if I want to assign it, it's got to be like that. Hey, stop that. Okay, so I certainly cannot say x plus equals even 1.0. Okay. When it made it, it really did make it an int. It really did make it a double. Just because I didn't have them there doesn't mean they're not there. If you know any Java, you know, again, it's based on Java. This compiles to the Java virtual machine, right? Or Java bytecode, I mean. So this is syntactic sugar. It makes it easier, but it's still what it is. It's these variables are statically assigned. Okay. So var name equals hacks. Okay, so hopefully that's obvious. That's a string. And like, why wouldn't we have a very consistent, simple syntax? Square brackets to get at chars. This, of course, is a char. Oh, I forget. I think it's capital C char, could be character. Okay. Oh, I should mention. Okay, so kind of like Java, we have to start with the main function, but it doesn't need to be in a class, which is kind of cool. Like Java, we can have args, but the cool thing is you don't have to. So if you have the args being passed in, these are command line arguments, you would see that they'd come as an array of string. Okay, so those are the two types for your main. It either has the args or doesn't have the args. I think for the sake of simplicity, if we're not using command line argument, just leave it off. Okay. Oh, I was right. It is capital C char. Good, good. Okay. Last variable type I care about. Now, there are other variable types. There's lots of variable types. But of course, this bugs me. Oh, even worse. There we go. Okay. There's a cool type that you don't see a lot of places. It's a range. Var, let's say hot equals, I don't know, like 25 to 35 seems hot. That's a beautiful, and so we could ask something like, hey, is 20 in hot? No, no, that's not hot. Okay, so you probably are familiar with in from Python. I could also ask, is it not in? And I think that's a pretty intuitive way of putting a not in. Yes. Okay. Type conversion. Okay, so if I have some number and I want to get the integer version of that, okay, so it's 2. Now you'll see, even in the play, it gives you all these options here right away. And certainly any real editor will do that. If you're doing it in Notepad, you're not going to get that, but anything else, IntelliJ, of course, will give you that. We have all these possibilities here. And they give you cool things like a pair is a built-in type. It's like a tuple. It's pretty cool. But to integer, of course, right? And there we go, to int. And of course, you would do that if you wanted to do some math with it. My as int times 10, no surprise. Okay, so that works in the most obvious fashion. And of course, the reverse. If I have, I already have my X. Okay, so I want something like some message. I don't know. You owe. And so I want to take that Y and convert it to a string. No surprise, it's to string. I'm not even going to print it. I hope you understand that that's going to convert it. And just like Java, it does convert it implicitly. And for those who haven't done, okay, show of hands actually, how many have done Java? I keep referencing Java, not all of you have seen it. Okay, so some have, some haven't, and I have no idea online how many have, how many haven't, sure. Okay, so to be clear, what I mean by implicitly is it automatically calls the to string. Whenever you try to add anything to a string, it converts it to a string. You get this for free from Java, right? That's just how Java works. Okay. Useful is the string formatting in Kotlin. Okay, so the most basic string formatting, there, let's make that a little bigger. Okay, is simply you, well, I feel like all these variables are going to bug me, clouding my namespace. Is it going to like that? Yeah, it does. Okay, good. Oh, if it's not obvious, / is a single line comment, / star is a multi-line comment. Okay. So I have some simple variables. You're encouraged to use val over var if you know you're not going to change your variable. Okay, so we have Massey and I don't know, it's like 70 years old or something like that. Hey, sometimes the help isn't very helpful. Yeah, age equals age. That's beautiful. Okay. And okay, so you're used to, if you've done it in Java before, having to kind of break out of this or do some string formatting. The formatting in Kotlin is very nice. If you want to get access a variable, you just put a $, and that says, hey, I want this name, not the same name, but to grab the variable instead. I think that's very useful. Okay, our school is Massey. Now, if you want to do an expression, you use $ curly brackets, and any expression can go inside there, which is, I think, also very useful. Okay. Now, we do have the same string formatting you'll see in Python. Now, I only started teaching this semester, so I think a lot of you haven't seen this. You may have seen it if you've gone online. The dot format. I haven't been teaching it this way because I want you ready for printf in Java, but the dot format's pretty nice. Okay, so we have some. You make some template. So for example, I could have the template be, now this is similar to our printf formatting still. In 5 years, you will be, let's talk about money instead, because I want number of decimal places. Usually val money equals, I don't know, 57 point, some random stuff that I want rounded to 2 decimal places, like U, O, and this is stuff you're used to, the %, 0.2f, and so you can just print line your template dot format with any values in there. Okay. I know a lot of you don't like string formatting. It's important to know. I teach it every year and everyone's like, oh, that's string formatting. I don't know it yet. Yeah, I know. Okay. Obviously, to do any real work in a language, you need to know flow of control. Okay, let's. String formatting, yes, yes, yes. Okay, so if, when, for, and do while and do while. Basic flow of control. These aren't that different from what you're used to. Okay, so you've all seen ifs. I don't want to belabor it by going into it, by painfully going through the program as we go and make you follow along. I think just seeing it and recognizing, oh, this syntax is kind of like what I already know. is probably going to be good enough for us for now until we get to doing some real stuff. And I want to focus more of the doing real stuff on the Android side. Okay, so our ifs, if you're used to it in Java, this is the exact same. If you're used to Python, instead in Python, the indent is significant. In Kotlin, it's not. Okay, I could put this all in one line, it'd be the exact same. Okay, so it's brackets to open and close it, curly brackets for the branches. Okay, so basic stuff there. Okay, this next one, I think I do have to go to the code and explain what's going on here. Okay, I don't think I need to keep all this previous stuff. It's only going to get in my way. Okay, so the important difference to note with Kotlin and an if, the if is an expression. What the heck's an expression? An expression is a bunch of symbols that take on a value ultimately, like x plus 7 is an expression. It takes on the value of some integer value, right? Okay. So this is going to be a little nonsensical, and that's hopefully you'll forgive me for that. Okay, so x equals 20. I said 20, jerk. Okay. This helping out doesn't help out a lot. Okay, so supposing I say, okay, so if x less than 50, so I got this simple setup. Okay, nothing new here, right? Okay, that's going to work exactly the way you expect it to. The expression nature of it is, I could say val flag equals, and what's going to happen is the value that it gets is the last line it sees. So I could say 0, just put a 0 there, and I put a 1 there. This editor keeps trying to help me out. I might jump to Intellij. It keeps helping me out like it is. Okay, so and to make it clear, it's actually getting that. Okay, so this if I can use as an expression and it takes on that value, which is kind of interesting, meaning we don't need a conditional operator that you see in other languages. Most of you don't know there is one in Python as well. That's okay. And so I can say, you know, if I want to get the bigger of two things, it's real simple. So if I have val, there's other ways to do this, obviously. And I want C to be the larger than them. Okay, so it looks like a ternary operator. If some condition, this the first value, else it's the second value. Same, so if A, if A greater than B, A else B. Now, this is taking advantage of the fact that even in Java or all these C-like type languages, if you only have one statement inside your branch, you don't need the curly brackets, you can drop them. And so this becomes just a reduction of those basic rules. First rule is that the last value in an if branch is the value of the expression takes on, and the second rule is you can drop the brackets. So this is just me writing the standard if on one line. In Python, it looks basically like this too, by the way. Okay. So that's our if. Now, for those who I taught Java to, you'll know I don't like the switch statement. I don't like the switch statement because you have to break it, otherwise it falls through and you end up with getting multiple branches when you don't mean to. I taught the switch statement for years, by the way, and I saw that error all the times and I stopped teaching it. In Kotlin, you have what's called a when, and it's far more useful. Okay. So I have my A, let's give A some reasonable value. Okay, so when A, so it's like a switch. And what you do is you say, okay, when A is 1, what I'm going to do is I'm going to print line 1. When it's 2, I print line 2, else. Now, you actually need the block here. Okay, so it's going to complain that I never used C. Yeah. Don't care. Doesn't like being bigger than the screen. Okay. And so this was a different value, of course. We go to the else branch. And one of the cool things here is you can take these, if they're similar, you can say like 1, 10, 11. Those are all ones in my world because they have a 1 in it. And that's pretty useful compared to a switch statement, which again falls through and does multiple branches without your permission, basically. Okay, so it's actually a useful version of the switch. Okay, let's talk about some loops. And I'm not going to cover the do while, although it's an improved do while. It's worth looking at. But for and while, you need both of these loops, obviously. Okay, so I'm not sure if we need to see this though. Okay. There's the when, yeah. Okay. Okay, so the for loop works the way it does in other languages. You should be used to this. You're not used to the list of, but that's okay. Anyways, you get the fact that this is a list. You've seen lists in Python, you've seen lists in Java. This isn't really shocking that that's a list. Okay, so for cake and cakes, it goes to each one at a time. You should be accustomed to this. This is a common programming strategy here. This is kind of cool, the way the range works for I in. And again, we showed that range type. And if you want to count backwards, also you can use characters because ultimately they're just Java characters, right? They go in sequence. So for character in Z down to S, step 2. It'll actually, count down letters. Okay, so the for is pretty useful. The while loop is the exact same as you would expect. Okay, so while this is true, it does its stuff. The interesting thing about, one of the reasons there's 2 reasons I hate the do while in Java. One is the N would be out of scope in this example here. You couldn't use it this way because the N would be scoped to inside these brackets. So you couldn't check it like this. So frustrating. And second thing about Java is you need a semicolon at the end here, and it's not really obvious why when you're programming. Neither of these are an issue in Kotlin, so do while is back in the good books, as far as I'm concerned, in Kotlin. Okay, there is some. Now, break works, but there's something cool about it that's probably worth seeing. Okay, so break works the way you expect it to, and who cares about that stuff? Okay, so we have, let's suppose we have a simple situation here, like for I in 1.10, for j and I don't know, 100.200. And we got some var, some total equals 0. And I don't know, we got something weird going on, like total plus equals I times j. Okay. Supposing at some point, so if total is greater than 10,000, say, we'll reach that pretty quickly, I think. I want to break. As you know, if you've done any programming before, this is only going to break this for. So one of the cool things you can do is you can say, you can give a label to your loops. Okay, so outer uses the at. Okay, so this guy is saying, I named this for loop the outer loop. And so when I break, I say at outer. And I don't want to see the whole mess this thing makes, but let's just see the eyes as it goes and see when it actually breaks. Okay. Oh, it breaks out a loop. It never gets. Yeah, of course, it never gets through one loop of that. Gets to 1. Let's go a little bigger here. Go to 1,000,000 or 100,000. Okay. So as you see, this is counting along. It breaks the full thing. Kind of useful. Okay, you can do the same thing with the continue loop, or with the continue statement. Okay. Functions. So nothing here is too shocking. So the parameter types, you specify them, and you specify the return type. The return type goes here. Okay. This is a notation a lot of languages use. Java likes putting it in front, and it's not really obvious what's going on with Java. Whereas here, I think it's more obvious, more explicit. This guy is returning an integer. Okay. I can return a string, obviously. Okay. Default parameters. Yeah. Anyways. Okay, so default parameters are, you give it a value. So here, supposing this function is supposed to remove a character from this string. Okay, mildly useful, sure. And let's say that the position that I'm removing, this equals 0, says if you don't supply that, give the values 0 to it. Okay, so if I say remove happy, that H is going to go. Okay, or I could say remove happy, comma 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, and the second P will go. Okay. Now, named parameters. So with default parameters, when you drop them, it has to be from the right-hand side. So for example, here I have a randint, and I say, okay, I want randint, I want the default starting value to be 0. So randint, I'm just saying it's a random integer. I want the default starting value to be 0 and the default ending value to be 10. Okay. So if I leave them both off, it gives me a number between 0 and 10. That's reasonable. Now, if I give it one number, it says, oh, you're dropping the second value. Now, if really what I want to do is I want to drop the first value. I want to say, well, yeah. I like the 0. I don't want to bother have to type it. It's so much work for me. What you can do, if you have a bunch of named parameters, you can just specify which one you want, and it'll fill that in and use the default for all the rest. Now, for this randint function, this is not particularly useful, right? Like, it was easier to just type the 0. But if you have a function like it's managing a button or something, and there's like 8 different parameters, and they're mostly going to be the same as normal, except for you want to specify a particular thing about it that isn't in the first thing. That's where you use name parameters for. So they only really matter in conjunction with default parameters. If you're not using default parameters, name pattern doesn't mean anything. Okay. So here's a weird thing. If it's one line, you can drop the curly brackets. Okay, now this is an extension of the fact that you can drop it in an if or a loop for your own functions. And it seems like this should have always been the way in Java or C. I don't know why it never was the way. But anyways, you can say, you can drop the curly bracket and just say it equals this. This is the result. Okay. So one of the tough things in Kotlin is the fact there's just lots of different ways to do things. You got to get used to that. Okay, extension function. This is a very useful language feature. Okay, so what I'm saying is with an extension function is you can extend the built-in classes and built-in classes that are there already. Okay, so for example, let's say we wanted to make a function count vowels. Okay, and it's going to take in a string, and it's going to count the number of vowels in that string. Pretty straightforward, right? So var c equals 0, and I'm simply going to say for character in my string, if the character is in A, E, I, O, U, A, E, I, O, U. Oh, it's a vowel. Sorry, Y. Never liked you. C plus equals 1. I guess that won't bug you too much. Okay. And so count vowels of okay. Oh, if you don't give the return type, it assumes unit. It's like a void. Int. 5 vowels in this thing. Okay. So hopefully that's straightforward. I'm just making a function that counts the vowels. Okay, so the extension part of this is I can build it into string. So it looks like this, fun string dot, let's call it vcount so it's shorter. Okay. Oh, it's got to return an int. Okay. Make sure I do this right. Okay. Let me make sure. Yeah. This. Okay. So this is a reference to the current string we're talking about. Okay, so this is the same logic, except you're saying, well, I don't have a parameter. I want it to be the actual string itself. So the actual string itself is this. Okay, so instead of okay, now at first you look at this and think they're kind of the same. You're right. They are kind of the same. Here's the real advantage of it. It's the namespace. This pollutes my namespace, meaning it exists in my global space of all the different names of things that I have. This doesn't. This is packaged up inside of string. Okay, and so what I can do is I can add this to multiple classes, and each one has its own. Each one calls the correct one. Now I know it doesn't make a lot of sense to talk about which integers are vowels. I get that, but when you're building your own classes or you're taking built-in classes, it's nice to be able to add functionality to them and not worrying about it cluttering your namespace. If you've done any large programs, you recognize there is a exponential development curve. One of the reasons for that is every new thing you add has a potential of interacting with old things. Whenever you have opportunities to declutter your namespace, these are valuable opportunities. So on the surface, it seems like, oh, I could do the same thing 2 different ways. That's cool. No, it's really important. Okay. If you can declutter your code like this, it's helpful. Do you use it everywhere? No, but it's helpful. When all you're doing is taking a string and doing something with it, you should be using an extension function instead. Okay. I don't want to get sidetracked too much in collections. I'll only bring them up as we need them because collections is a real rabbit hole. We can talk about lists and sets and maps, and we can go on for hours talking about how to use them properly. But the only way you're going to learn how to use them properly is to use them in context. We're going to keep our talk to array and list. Okay. So array is your primitive type in Java. Under the hood it is, so it's efficient. Okay, so those don't care. Okay. So var, so here's your basic array. So you can have the type of this, you could say is array of int, and I never do it this way. Anyways, you can make it an array of integers and then add the integers later. Okay. Or if you're actually just going to, like I do with most of my variables, I just give it a value. And the way to give it a value is array of. So cat, dog, mouse. Okay. And hopefully that makes sense. No, add 0. Okay. And so that's going to be spot cat. Now here's something you're not going to like too much. So I make it a val. Okay, nothing weird there. nums at 0 equals snake. And it's not because you don't like snakes, or maybe you don't. But I made it a val, which means it's a constant, it's immutable. And yet I changed the first one. If you've done any Java, you understand what's going on here. What's immutable is the memory address of nums. So I can't make it point, I can't say nums equals array of daffodil, rose, orchid. I can't do that, but I can change the values in the array. Okay, so that's your primitive array. Now, there's a little bit of weirdness. Oh, yeah. I guess they're not really numbers, are they? Okay, so you do have a bit of weirdness with, there's these nums equals array of, and nums2 equals int array of. Okay. If you know some Java, what's going on here, the first one becomes, they're integers. The second one are ints. So you're causing some boxing and unboxing going on. Remember, it's still running on the JVM. For everyone else, you don't care. Basically, you'll see one or the other, like either the same. There's a minor efficiency issue using an int array of versus an array of. I'm not going to get into that. Okay. That's as much as the collections I want to talk about for now. Classes. I don't really want to go into classes, so I'm going to brush over this pretty quickly. But let's do a real quick version of it. Okay, so your fields, it ends up looking like you can just assign to them directly. The key is, though, so these fields here, name and age, outside in main, I can say, so I make a person, I can say p1.name equals, well, p1.age equals something else. So it looks like, oh, they've lost all access protection. They've thrown away all of Java stuff. No, what's happening is, you recognize in Java, what you have to do when you make a class is all this boilerplate, get name, get age, set age. And instead, when it makes the bytecode, it adds all those things, but it also adds syntactic sugar such that you can simply say dot age equals something. Under the hood, it's calling set age. Now, if you want it not to give you a set name, here, private set. That says, don't let this be set. Okay? And of course, rather than giving the constructor the same name as this, you just call it constructor. Override toString. Hopefully that's obvious what's going on there. Okay. So you can make, okay, so my point class, I can take in, so here, I can put the parameters here, and that automatically, that makes a default constructor that takes in both the X and the Y, assigns them to the fields, it makes fields for X and Y, it does all that stuff for me. I don't need anything special. They're already all there, okay? And so, because this is a very common template kind of stuff that you do in Java, and here this class does it all for me. You just put it up in the, you treat the class like it's a function, it automatically makes it the default constructor. It's very useful. And I can make my own functions there, no problem. There's even a data class. which if you make your class a data class, it automatically includes equals, hash code, toString automatically there, copies automatically there. So it does all this stuff for you. And that's what you're going to want to do a lot of the times you're making, if you've played around with C at all, they have a structure. With Java, you have to make a class, and it's really awkward. Here, a data class, all that stuff is done for you. Everything is as obvious as possible. This class just holds data. Data classes are beautiful when making classes in Kotlin. Okay, functional programming. Okay, so basically, functional programming is treating your functions the same as you treat variables. Now, I know functional programming is confusing, but I need to go over the basics of it. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. So multiply, I'm saying, is a function. So this notation here, bracket int, comma int, saying, well, okay, my multiply function takes 2 integers and it returns an integer. Whenever I use these, yeah. So the curly brackets here, this is a lambda function. This is an unnamed function, but I'm giving it a name here, right? So the result is I take the x and the y, and it becomes x and y. Okay. Let's look at that in code and see how that works. Okay, so there's a lot there that's hard to look at. Let's try and get our head around that. Okay. So I'm saying okay, so I'm saying I have a multiply function. It's of type, take an int and an int. So colon and the type. And the result of it is going to be an int. Am I getting my syntax wrong here? And that equals, okay, x comma y goes to x times y. Okay. So okay, so I could do it like this. Now, obviously, multiplying in this fashion isn't useful. Whenever you're doing something new, you start with what is obvious, what is simple, what is straightforward. Okay, so you're not surprised to get 20 there, right? You shouldn't be surprised to get 20 there. Okay. Now, so I got my multiply in that version here. Okay. Now, I could give the names here instead. Okay, so let's take this. So the second version of the function. I could, at this point here, when I'm making it, I could give the names x and y and go right to the answer here. Okay, so in other words, I take just this right-hand side and I give it the type. I can't just go to the right-hand side alone. I can't just say multiply equals. Okay, I can't simply say multiply equals this because it doesn't know the type of x and y. It needs to know those types. So this is an int, and this is an int, and then it's like, okay, well, yeah. So it recognizes, oh, okay, the whole thing's returning int times int. That's an integer. It figures this out. But you can't leave it all blank because it needs to know. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is this type alias. Let's skip the type alias. It's cool, but we're going too deep. Okay. So there's an hour of the just the basics. Let's put this into practice now. Okay, so I've gone quickly over the whole language. Before Android development, I want to talk about type safety. And I don't know if I have it there. That's okay. A big thing in Kotlin is type safety. Sorry, not type safety, null safety. Okay, so if you've done any Java, you've come across null pointers, and you've found them kind of annoying. I don't know anyone who loves null pointers. I don't know anyone who gets a null pointer exception and says, "Oh, good, finally." Okay, a null pointer. So to be clear, what's going on here in a standard language like Java, if I say int array nums, and then later I say what's nums at 0. Okay, I didn't assign nums to anything. It has the ability to point at an array of integers, but it's currently not pointing anywhere. It has the memory address of 0. That's a null. When I try to access what's at spot 0, I'm trying to do something with a null value that will give a null pointer exception. There's lots of different ways this happens. It can still happen in Kotlin, but they try to make it easier. They try to build in some support for it. Okay, so this is Java. Null pointer exception. Okay. So okay. So Kotlin tries to fix null pointers. It does it a few different ways. So first, checking for null in conditions. Oh, nice spelling. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. So first, you must be clear whether your variable can have nulls or cannot. Okay. So I have something like val a equals, well, let's say colon string equals Massey. Val b colon string equals null. A better compiler would complain right away at that. To say that it can be null, I need a question mark after it. It's like string, huh? Meaning maybe it's not really a string, maybe it's a null. Okay, so that'll compile. Never use, yeah. Okay, now, whatever. If I want to access these, if I print line b, or let's say b dot length, I try and run that. It says no. It recognized the type of B is nullable, meaning it could be null. Whenever I access it, I have to do so with trepidation, as it were. So when I access it, I have to do it with a question mark after it. And all that does, it says, if this is null, then whatever operation I do will also be null. If B is null, okay, so rather than crashing, it gives me a null. And you can have situations where you have multiple things chained together. It's like, well, if it's null, access the B property of it. And if that's, if it's not null, access the B. And if that's null, access the C property of that. Okay. And if either A or B is null, the whole thing comes back as null. Okay. So it avoids this complicated if statement you'd need to do your code safely. Okay, so there's the question mark. That's what it's doing. It's called, they're doing safe calls. Okay, so the second operator is the Elvis operator. Okay, so let's examine a situation. Okay, so I have like val, some string. Okay, maybe it's null, maybe it's not. I'll make it null for now. Okay. So I've got some string, maybe it's null, maybe it's not. So it's questionable. Obviously, I'm not gonna do this with strings very often, but there's lots of other things. Well, I will make null first and get assigned a value later. Okay, so obviously if I wanna check the length of this, I could have something like the len equals, well, if my string equals null, then the length of that is -1, else it is the string dot length. Okay, so that's standard kind of, I don't think I need the safety here because it knows, Kotlin actually figures it out that, oh, you just checked if it's null. I know it can't be null. That should work. Hey. Okay, so it comes back as -1, no surprise. And let me just change this to dog. Okay, so that works, obviously. Okay, that's a safe version of that. Truth is, so the Elvis operator allows me to do this basic functionality. Val len equals B question mark dot length. Or -1. Okay, so it's called the Elvis operator just because of the way it looks. It looks like Elvis's hair. You turn to the side a bit there, it looks like Elvis's hair. That's why they call it the Elvis operator. But what it's doing is it's saying, okay, if this comes back as null, instead use this value. Okay, so I'm saying the Elvis operator is like it's like a conditional operator saying if this was null, use this value instead. So it provides a default value. So it's very useful. So it provides a value, and what's left of it was null. Okay, I think that's pretty useful. The last operator, 2 exclamation marks. It's so angry, eh? So this is default Java way of doing things. This is the default Java reaction. If it's null, just crash. Why is this operator important? It's important because when you start doing Kotlin, you're going to be trying doing something and the compiler's going to complain to you, we can't do this. It could be null. And you're like, I just want to test something. So we use 2 exclamation marks. Okay. So this, it's great when you just want it to work. You just want it to work and you haven't quite figured out the null safety in Kotlin yet. That's okay. It's okay to learn things at a time, like one bit at a time. Okay. And that, of course, is simply, I would say, like string exclamation mark dot length. It's like, okay, if it's null, crash, whatever, I don't care. And usually you're pretty sure it's not null. Okay. I would encourage you to not rely purely on this operator. There's a reason why the null safety stuff exists. Okay. What am I at? 12, 15, 16. Okay. Leaves me some time to do some Android development. Okay, so where do we start? Okay. From Google, download Android Studio. So developer.android.com, Studio. Okay, I'm not going to download mine right now. You already have. Okay. We need a show of hands here. I have 2 options. I can either give you, I don't know, 10 minutes, take a 10-minute break right now so you guys can download Android Studio and get things working. Make sure when it asks for Kotlin, you say yipper. Okay, show of hands. How many want me to give you 10 minutes to download and get things installed so you're ready for the next segment? Yeah, that seems to make sense to me. Okay, so you should be at the place. Okay, in order to continue, you should have Android Studio installed, and it'll default to my last project. Okay. Okay, 10 minutes. We'll come back at 12:28, and we'll get talking about Android Studio. Okay, so hopefully everyone had a chance to download Android Studio. Does anyone need a hand setting it up correctly? Unfortunately, I'm not an expert on that because I did it for myself and it was obvious. And so, so I don't know what kind of problems you may have encountered. And does anyone need, before we go on, does anyone need a hand setting theirs up? I'm taking no answers as no, everything is fine, which means either you got it set up or you're content to simply watch me play with mine. Okay, I'm okay either way there. Okay, so I'm going to go with the full screen because I want you to see how the, okay, so I got that. Okay, so there you go. Okay, you can even see my messy desktop. Yeah, it has gotten messy, my goodness. Anyways. So I want you to go to a new project. I'm not going to play with any of these other things except for empty activity. Okay, so the name of it, oh, I don't know, I'm going to call it Hacks 1. I'm not too worried about the package name you get. Okay, make sure that you've selected Kotlin as your language. I'm not really concerned about your minimum SDK. We're not going to be publishing this, but it is worth noting that when you develop an application, you do have to consider what's the minimum SDK that will support it. Now, if you've never done any Android development before, what happens in each of these new releases is there's new functionality available. And what happens, if you want the new functionality, well, you need to go with a version that supports that at least. And if you don't want it, a lower version is going to allow you access to more people. As you can see, if I change the number here to API 23, that was Marshmallow, well, 84.9% of devices will be able to use it. If you want to put it right all the way to the bottom, less than 1% use that. But as long as you have that installed in yours, it doesn't matter. Anyways, Oreo's fine, 60% is fine. Okay, and I'm going to finish that. So let's look at what we have here. And let me close my last one down. Okay, we'll give it a second to load. If you've never used Intellij before, this is going to look daunting. There's a lot here. It's just, it all hits you at once. And the first time I opened this up, I just wanted to close it. I'm like, oh, there's too much. It was just like assaulted my senses. You get used to it. You really do. Okay, let's do a quick kind of look through here. And what I'm not going to do is step through this menu and explain what every single function does. Quite frankly, I don't know all the functions. I know the ones I use. Okay, so first thing that matters here is you have your project to the side. Now, this may be minimized, but this allows you to bring it out. Okay, so you see you have your app. It may be minimized like that. It's probably expanded though. Okay. We're not going to touch the manifest. You certainly can if you want to. Okay, so the folder is still called Java because that was the original language used, and your stuff is still called Java. That's okay. Okay, so we're not going to worry about the test or the example unit test. I don't care about any of those. Main activity, this is where your code goes. Okay. Your default activity is called main activity, and that's where you're going to put your code. Okay. Now you have your resource folder, and you have drawable things, and you can look at these, and you can see the pictures of them. So these are the resources we're currently using. don't particularly care about those right now. Main activity main.xml. We do care about this. You'll see it's open by default. Hey, you'll see at the top when you start your first project, it'll be open already. Let me close down the ones I'm not using. I'll get back to that activity main in a second. It's very important. Okay, so we have this map. I don't care. It's values. If you want to do things correctly, you care about these. And these are kind of the default values. Your strings, stylistically, you should put in your strings here. It'll warn us about this all the time. I don't really care that much. Okay. If you're doing your app correctly, everything goes in values to make it so you can port it well. Yeah, I don't care that much. Okay, so the Gradle is the script that uses to compile it. There's a very important thing. We're going to go to the second one here. Okay, so hopefully you're following along. You go to your second Gradle here. So it's Gradle for the module, not for the project. You'll see these plugins. One of the things that makes programming Android easier in Kotlin, it allows you to access your resources easier rather than using a function to find them, as it were. And this is called Android extension, or Kotlin, yeah, Kotlin Android extensions. So I'm going to copy, paste that, and say extensions. And now I have to synchronize my project. Sync now is fine. Okay. So by doing that, it makes accessing things I've made easier. Okay. We can close that now. Close my strings, close my colors. These are the two I care about. Main activity.kt is a Kotlin extension. Hopefully you're not surprised by that. XML. Okay, so click on this. And what we see here is what my app's going to look like. Now I can close all this down, minimize that for now. Okay, so by default, I have this hello world. Let's see what it looks like. I'm going to do a run here. Now it may ask you to set up this first, to decide what device it's going to go on. Oh. Okay. So a little emulator shows up. Now, it's not that hard to put this onto your actual phone, but I would suggest until you're ready to go, you don't bother with that. You simply run it through the emulator. The emulator's fine. Okay, so we said it should look something like this, and then, hey, it runs, it looks like that. And you can play around with your emulator, and it emulates a real phone, and that's nice and all. I would suggest once it's open, don't constantly close it and shut it off. Just leave it. It'll run faster, and you're testing it if you just leave it in the background. Okay. So delete your hello world. Now, if you've ever done any GUI stuff, this is kind of standard. So your graphical user interface, often just called UI, user interface, because everything's graphical these days. Okay, so it's very common to have a toolkit. No different here. And so here, these are all the tools we can use. This is called our palette. These are all the things we can add. So it gives you the common ones here, but you can look at the different text, buttons, widgets, layouts, containers, helpers, Google, and some legacy stuff. Legacy stuff are generally replaced for efficiency reasons. They're fine to use when you're just playing around and learning Kotlin though, or learning Android development. Like for example, list view. It's pretty simple to use, but it's not very efficient. For large lists, it got replaced by recycler view because it recycles the resources, but you don't care when you're making a small application. List view is fine. Okay. And let's go in here and build our most basic application. It's going to be the hello world version of this. Okay, so I'm going to take in my text, so the names are kind of weird. So plain text allows you to enter text that the user, it allows the user to enter text into this thing here. And then we're going to add a simple button. Okay, so we're going to drag them on like that. And we're going to run it, and you're not going to like the results. So I stop the current app running, and I run this new one. And again, I told you you're not going to like it, so don't be surprised when you don't like it. You can act surprised, though. Okay, here's my emulator. Both my button and my name here went to the top left corner. So the first thing you have to learn is constraints. When you put things onto your activity main, your XML, you have to tell it how they are constrained, how it is to handle the different sizes and shapes of different phones it could be on as they get rotated sideways in this. So you give it constraints. Now all you do here, you click on it and it'll give you these. Now, obviously you can use the squares, the handles, to resize it, but these circles here are your constraints. Now, so I take this and I drag it to the top and I say, okay, I want it to be relative to that top. And if I just click on it and drag it down a bit, it's going to say, okay, you see it measured how far. So 40 dp, without getting into, and I take this one here and I say, okay, I want you to be over there. And I'm going to move it a little bit to the right. Okay. So that's relative to the top left corner. And this button here, I'm going to say, I go to the very top, go to the very bottom, that centers it. I go to the right, I go to the left, completely centered in my app. Okay. I run it again. It's not a great layout, I know that, okay? And I'm not pretending to have a great layout. And there we go. So if I put this onto my phone, it would actually work just like this. I could go here and I could type in my name, and I could press a button, and it wouldn't do anything else. That would be it. Okay. Now I want to do a very basic, just hello guy. Oh, first, this is called activity main.xml, but this does not look like an XML file. Okay, here's the key. Top right corner, you have this code, split, and design. Okay, so I click on the code. Those are my two things, my edit text and my button. So I can actually, okay, so let's go to this edit text. I'm going to copy the whole thing and paste it. Now you see right away it says, oh, so the ID is what you refer to it as in code. It's like its variable name, okay? Edit text person name. Okay, so I'm going to go here and say, I'm going to call this last name. Stops being read because it's no longer conflicting. Now this one says I got the width and I have the height. Okay. And it says that the margin top is 36. Well, I'm going to say it's 96. As soon as I go back to my design, it's there. Okay, so they synchronize. You can do it in the code, you can do it in the design. Some things are easier in the code. You want to be very precise. Code's very precise. You can put the exact pixels you want or the DP, whatever. It's not quite dealing with pixels, but anyways. Okay, you'll see that there are a slew of attributes here that you can change about all of these things. Okay. There's so many of them that you might say, well, gee, I get lost in all these. This little search button, very useful. So you want to change the size. The text size, okay, I'm saying, well, I want it to be 24. Okay. And now the default text there is name. Now it's going to warn you about using hard-coded things. Yeah, stylistically we shouldn't. Anyways, I'm not even going to worry about hint names and all that stuff. Okay, I'm going to keep it. So this button is currently called button. So I'm going to change the text to say hi. Okay, so nothing weird going on there. And I'm going to say I really don't want the last name anymore. Delete that. And you notice code, it's gone. They stay synchronized. One change changes both. Okay, hopefully that's straightforward. Okay, this name though, I'm going to call it txt name. I think that's easier to remember. And now it says, hey, you want to make sure that happens everywhere? Yeah, refactor that, yeah. Wherever you refer to it, fix it, which is pretty useful. If you already have code referring to that object, you'll just fix it. Now, I always set up my IDs first. I think it's the most useful thing to do. Okay, let's get in the actual code and make this button do something useful. Oh, let's start off by, I'm just gonna put in a new text here where the output's gonna be. So text view is something you can only view, you can't actually change. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm gonna say I want it centered. Then I'm gonna take this one here and I'm gonna touch it to the top of this button. So now it's relative to the button. Okay, so the button is centered. And this guy's gonna move. Okay. Default text, I'm gonna clear that out totally, no text there at all. And let's change the size to something a little more dramatic. Okay. Let's go to the code. Main activity.kt. Okay. So my button is currently just called button. And so I want to set something to happen when I click on it. Okay. Button. Now, if I didn't have that Kotlin extension thing, it wouldn't know about this. Okay. And it says, okay, this is the guy from the main activity. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Dot. Hey. It's still confused. Okay, it says, I'm not sure what it is. Alt enter. And that forces it to import it properly here. When it doesn't give you the suggestions here, it doesn't know what it is. Okay, so set on click listener. Yep. Okay. And we're going to go, and I'm going to make, I'm not taking any parameters. Okay, so you see we have it. It is a view. Okay, so it's like the graphics context of the object. Okay, so I'm going to change the text on the other guy. So what did the guy call? This guy needs an ID. Text view, sure. That's text view, and this is txt name. Okay, I should get my naming convention down a little better. Okay, so I'm going to say my text view dot text. Now, it looks like I'm assigning to a property. It actually goes through an accessor function. But again, the simplicity of the look is all I care about. I don't care what's happening under the hood, really. And that's going to be hello. And that was txt name dot text. Okay, so say now it's good. Hey, oh, I can't always figure out how this editor works. Yeah, and of course say hi, hello Mackenzie. Okay, if you've played around with any user interfaces before, anything like Swing or anything, even in JavaScript, this is simplicity I haven't seen since Visual Basic, and this is kind of important. Okay, our next step. Time's running out. I want you to try to make an app. What? Okay, so I want to make a useful app. And so what we're going to do is have a temperature converter app. Sounds straightforward? Okay, so where do we start when making an app? Well, we start by planning. Okay, so where did my tablet get to? Okay, so you start by planning. And so I say, okay, well, I want to make a temperature converter app. So on paper, quote unquote paper in this case, you give some thought. Oh, that's really fat. Okay, so you give some thought to where things are going to be. You say, okay, so I want to convert from Celsius to Fahrenheit because I'm old school. So cell, and then I want some text there, and Fahrenheit, and this is just going to be a text view, and convert. Okay, so when you're doing planning in any kind of visual interface, you don't want to be jumping back and forth to figure out the IDs of all your stuff. You want to nail them down right at design. Okay, and what they are. Okay, so this isn't going to change, so that's just a text view. Not going to change, text view. I'm going to change it only, not the user, text view. And this guy is going to be plain text. It's an odd name for it. Other ones call it like edit box or something. Anyways, the one you can think is there. Okay, so the ones I'm going to access in code, I need their IDs. Okay, so I'm going to call this txt far for the answer, and txt cell, that's pretty good, even though they're different types of things. I think that's fine. I'm going to actually leave that as button. I don't really care about it. Okay. I want you to try to do this. I'm going to give you, let's say 6 minutes. So drag and drop the stuff on your interface, change the IDs to the IDs I gave you here, or your own as long as you can remember them. And then we're going to talk about making the button do the work. Gordon, you there? Does anyone know how long this workshop's supposed to be? I thought it was 2 hours. I don't want to go over my time.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 2 hours, but if you want to go over, you can if you want.
Okay. We'll give you 10 minutes then, because I want you to get this much done for sure. And then I want to do a second where we go a little deeper into just a little more design stuff. Yeah, so I'm gonna, what do we have here? Yeah, so at 1, I'm going to take up the solution to the simple one. And then I do want to do one more example, if you'll bear with me. Thanks, UC. you have questions, you can ask them. Okay, hopefully we have 100% success. That's okay though, because I'm going to go through it. Oh. Okay, so here we are. Nothing done. New project. Empty activity again. Next. Celsius to Fahrenheit. That's fine. Not concerned with the package name. I'm not even concerned with the minimum SDK. Finish that. Okay. Close my old window. I'm done with that for now. Oh, and it'll terminate my connection to that. That's life. Okay. So again, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Gradle scripts, and I'm going to add the Kotlin extensions. It makes it much easier to access components from my code. So if you're trying to access your things and you said, I don't know what the heck that is, you probably forgot this. Okay, so sync that now. And I go back. First thing I'm concerned with is the design. So I drew a picture of that design. I told myself I had names I was going to give it. That's cool. I'm not overly concerned about stuff. Okay, so I have text view. This is text view is text you cannot change. And that was the words Celsius and Fahrenheit. Okay, so that's going to be a little bigger than that, obviously. Okay, so I have Celsius is there. Okay, I don't particularly care about the name. Not sure why that's red. Her? It's probably hello world still there, sitting there, eh? Oh, yeah, I don't care about the hello world. That can go. Okay. And I don't particularly care about. Okay, so just to show you, I can do it either way. Here, and again, it's just going to be the words Fahrenheit. And it's going to warn me that shouldn't be hard coded. That should be a thing. Yeah, whatever. I can actually, if you want to do a string resource, you can do this. This is the proper way of doing it. It'll put this into my string resources as, I'm not too worried about that. Okay, I do want it to be lower down though, the top, 86, let's say, take a look at it. I'm like, okay, I like that. Okay, so the answer is going to be, whatever. Okay, so the answer, so the answer is going to show up there. I'm not going to call it text view 4. I'm going to call it, as I did here, text var txt Fahrenheit. Okay. Refactor the code, sure. Okay. And I need a place for them to enter their text. That's called plain text. Now, if I take the top here and I put it to this top, it lines the tops up. I take this one and put it there, and I slide it over a little bit. Okay. And the default text of nothing probably makes more sense than the name. And I said I'm going to call this txt cell. Okay. and I want a button to actually activate things. I could add code when I type into there, but a button's a more common way of triggering code to happen. And let's just make it under there. And let's line that up with that. Okay. There's my layout. Left that called button. That's called text far. This is called text cell. So the ones I'm referring to in code, I care about their names. The ones I'm not referring to in code, I don't care about their names. Okay. So I go to my main activity and I want something to happen when I click the button. Oh, I think, yeah, import the thing. Yeah. Okay. Now it knows what I'm talking about. So button dot set on click listener. Yeah. And let's just go to the actual code. If I want to refer to the button itself, I call it it. That's a little hint there. It : view. A view is like the context of it. Like if I wanted to, if I had a bunch of buttons, I put them into a list and I wanted them to all have their own listeners, they would use it to define themselves, to not have to refer to its actual by name. Anyways, or if there's another command that needs a view. Anyways, I'm not gonna get sidetracked on the views right now. Okay, so all I'm gonna do is I need the Celsius amount, and that is okay. Oh, I think I did. So I get it from the, so it is text cell dot text dot to double. Oh, it doesn't like that? Okay. Let's say to string first. Dot to double. Okay, so it's not quite string yet. Sure, whatever. Okay. And now I say my text Fahrenheit dot text equals, nothing special going on here. I don't want a sentence. So all I'm gonna do is convert it. And that is Celsius times 9/5 plus 32 dot to string. And maybe I want that a little nicer, like 1 decimal place. Okay, so that's going to be %.1 f dot format. That looks pretty good. Let's give it a run. Celsius, it is, I don't know. Let's get my phone out. So my phone gives me this cryptic 22, which to you guys, that makes perfect sense. Button should probably have something better on it than called button. Anyway, 71.6, oh, that makes sense to me. Okay, ignoring the font sizes in that and the button not being named properly. There you go, there's our, okay, show of hands. How many got it working on their own? I'm gonna guess some of you still don't have it working. Okay. Another show of hands. How many have time for one more? Oh no, just Elsie? And UC? All the C's, eh? Okay, so for the sake of those who are watching on the live stream, I'm going to do a second one. For those who really don't have time, have other things to get onto, I hope you enjoyed this session, and you're welcome to leave. I'm not going to make you stay. I'm not that kind of mean. I'm a different kind of mean. Anyways, I'm going to do one more example, though, because I want to go a little deeper into the kind of stuff you can do to design an application. Okay, and I'm going to guess that I'm not going to remember everything, which will be a good example of jumping on Google and looking for things. Okay. I want to do a very basic pizza form. Okay, so I'll give some thought to what it's going to look like. And I think, okay, well, it's going to look like a phone app. Yeah, okay. That would make sense. Mackenzie's Pizza, yep. Okay, so I'm going to guess we're going to want something like small, medium, large. Oh, maybe we'll give the values for these. And then some toppings. And then we'll have an order button. And then total. Okay. So what I really want to explore here is the difference between checkboxes and radio buttons. So checkboxes are ones where you can do multiple of them. And a radio button is one where only one should be selected at a time. I thought this was common knowledge, but I was doing a Udemy class. The guy was teaching it, and he didn't seem to know that. He treated his checkboxes like radio buttons. When you click one, he actually coded it so they had to unclick the other ones. I'm like, do you not know how radio buttons work, buddy? Anyways, that's how radio buttons are supposed to work. Okay, now the issue with radio buttons is you can have multiple groups of them on the same form. For example, I'm not going to add this to mine, but I could have something like delivery, eat in, pickup. Okay, obviously you can't do all three of those. Now, all of these shouldn't be in the same group, right? It's not like you're getting a medium pizza or delivery, right? These are mutually exclusive options. Like this is a group and this is a group. So I want to show you how to do a group and then how to get the value for checkboxes. Okay. And so right back here. Oh, I should give some. I guess I really don't care what these are called. So I'm going to simply go CHK1, CHK2, and so on, because I don't care if it's pepperoni or cheese, really. They're all going to be the same price in mine. And then RAD for radio, small, medium, large, that makes sense. And I'm not going to have that. And TXT total makes sense. And I'm going to leave that called button because I don't care. Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, so again, file new. And sadly, I'm not going to leave you time to do it yourself because you don't understand how the checkboxes and radio buttons work yet. Okay, so pizza form seems reasonable. Close my last one. Okay, let's see if you've learned anything. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I can't see the chat. What's the first thing I'm going to do with this application? Someone has to pay attention. Someone. No one? Yes. Thank you, Elise. Or Elsie, sorry. Yes. I'm going to go into my Gradle and say, make sure you're adding the Kotlin extensions. Oh. Oh. Okay. Good. That's going to make it easier for me to access my stuff. Next thing I do, of course, is I go and I design my form. I can minimize that for now. You can play around with different sizes, by the way, and see what it'll look like. Pixel 3 is what I typically use. Okay, I don't have a Pixel 3. It just, I think it was in one example I was doing. Anyways, okay, first thing I do, get rid of that. Next thing I do is get rid of that hello world. And okay, so I'm gonna have the title there. And it's gonna be, again, the constraints are important. I'm gonna make it, so I do the left and right, bring it down a bit. Find the ID doesn't matter because I'm not gonna change it in code, but I do care about the size. That seems pretty small. And to make it clear, I don't have to choose a drop down. I can make it my own size. I can type it in myself. That's fine. And the actual text. If you have a different name than Mackenzie, you could use that. Okay, real quick, you can change the background here.
Sir, I think your stream stopped sharing.
I stopped sharing because I wanted to see the results, see if anyone knew what the heck they're doing. Yeah, where is that at? There we go. We'll full screen again, just so I don't have to jump back and forth. Okay. Okay, so the background, if you want to, you can give your own color for it. That's terrible. Maybe material 200. Let's grab a reasonable blue. Sure, that seems okay. Okay, kind of matches my pictures in the back. Okay. So your radio buttons should belong to a radio group. So you click on button. Oh, no, click on buttons. And you see, I'm going to add a radio group. Now it's this weird thing where it has no size to it. There's nothing in it yet. Now, you might have your component tree not open yet. Make sure you open your component tree, because with the radio buttons, you're going to drag it and put them underneath that radio group. So I'm going to put 3 buttons there. Okay, and now I click on the group. When I move this, hey, I don't know how to make the whole thing. Whatever. And I'm going to put it, actually, I'm going to line it up with my text here. And then, because I couldn't figure out how to make that work, I'm going to go to the text. Yeah, whatever. I want it to be down a bit. I don't care. I don't have time for that. Okay, so these buttons here, I said I want it to be called rad small. Rad medium. A lot of times you'll do things and something will pop up and say, we have to do this other thing. You say, yeah, do whatever you got to do, Kotlin. And again, we're just going to change the text. Small, medium. I'm not even bother with the font sizes. Large, okay. And the checkboxes. We'll put them, okay. And again, I didn't care, so I'm gonna go CHK1. And what do we have? Extra cheese, sure. Okay, and I think it's easy to go to the code here and say my checkboxes. Two, three, four of them maybe. Okay, so here we go. It's going to be check 2 and check 3 and check 4 and the top margin. This is relative to the other thing there. Let's go plus 40, let's say. So 52 and 92 and 132. Hey. Okay, and the text, this one's called extra cheese. Next one. Ham, because I'm likely to spell pepperoni wrong. I always get confused which ones are doubles. Green peppers and mushrooms. Okay, I go back to my design, make sure I like the way it looks. Looks just fine. Okay. I'm going to add an order button, but I'm not even going to bother putting the total on here. I don't think it's a hard thing to do to add the total, because it's very similar to what we already did with the Celsius Fahrenheit. I'm just going to have it show up so that we can see that we know what's been ordered. Okay, so here typically you have one of these checked by default. I'll leave it off. Okay, let's get to the code. Okay, so same thing. Button, it says, is it one of those? You say, yep. Set on click listener. Okay. So what I have to do here is I have to figure out which one it is, small, medium, large. And so I don't remember top of my head how to do that. And so let's try and get so val size. Okay, so actually the group needs a good name too. Okay, these all belong to the group. Size group. I made the point of naming all these, but they don't matter. The group's the one that matters the most. It just tells you which one of those was selected. Okay, so here I'm going to say it is the size group. Oh, I don't think I refactored that. Size group, her. Maybe it, okay. Size group dot, okay. So now when you're doing programming normally, it's nice to do a print line to see what's going on. I don't think the print line is going to show up very nicely here. I try and look at it here. Let's just try it. What did it actually print here? Okay, so I'll give it a run. Oh, I forgot to tell where these things are. Anyways, hit the button. Where did the print line go? Not in the terminal. There, it goes to the, so you get some weird ID. Okay, so this is not an actual size, this is just an ID. Okay, so the question is, what do I do with that ID? Val, the size. Okay, so it's my size group dot, so I have an ID. Oh, it's something from ID, I recall vaguely. Okay, got to resort to Google. Kotlin, radio button from ID. Geeks for Geeks is pretty solid. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. Okay. Radio group, that's the name of the group. Checked radio button ID. Okay. The ID is not -1. So if it's not selected, it's -1. Find view by ID. I would never have guessed that. Okay. So the size is find view by ID. I pass in the ID here. Okay. And I print that size. And it doesn't know what the heck. Oh, not enough information. Hey, what did I do here? Okay. Oh, it needs to know what I'm getting. So what radio button it actually is. Okay, so it needs to know that it's actually returning a radio button. Sure. And so it's radio dot text. And now this cryptic getting things from the run screen here, I gotta move those guys over too. That's not very useful, right? Okay, let me show you how to do a proper printout inside of here. It's called toast dot make text. The context is this. You give it the the text you want, and then you have this, the duration. And the duration is found in toast dot. Let's do a short little pop-up. Oh, sorry, that's radio dot text. Okay, so the print line you recognize is kind of useless in this setting. Oh, I gotta, whatever. Hey. One last time. This toast is worth seeing. Getting the full total on that isn't worth doing, but it is worth seeing the toast work. Okay, so I get a size. The toast didn't work. Okay, I have basically run out of time, but I do want to get that toast working. Does it have to be long? And I'm going to just real quickly put in a hello here so you can see the toast working. These aren't lined up very well, I know. I have no idea why toast is supposed to just pop up a bit of text and it stays for a little bit. I have no idea why it's not working, and I'm not going to figure it out before we're done here. Okay. I did want to show you about the radio buttons and that, but we're hitting the half an hour over mark, so I don't want to go any further. So I hope you guys learned something here today. So a lot of this is playing around with the UI stuff. You need a fundamental understanding of Kotlin first, but it's not hard to start developing apps using Android Developer. It really isn't. Android Studio, sorry. Okay, I would suggest if you're going to use Android Studio, Kotlin is the preferred language. It just makes things easier. It really does. Okay, we are going to call it quits. I know I didn't finish the last example. I kind of rushed through it a bit, but that's okay. I expected to run into problems and have to look them up, but things didn't quite get the perfect resolution, and that's okay. Okay. Have a good day, everyone. You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye, sir. Have a good day.
You too, Yusi.
All right. See you, sir.
Okay, Gordon, take care.